Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia Dearin, and it's great to be with you here today. Now, I am the founder of Dearin & Associates, which helps companies to scale internationally. And we do this primarily via our International Business Accelerator program, which is for companies turning over between $1 and $10 million. And I have had the privilege of being involved with the Trader Roots program this year. And so this morning, I thought that I would share with you just two of the models that underpin the work that I did with the group. So let me share my screen. And the first model that I want to share is what we call at the International Business Accelerator, the blueprint for international success. Can everybody see that on the screen now?
Yep.
Fantastic. And so this model is really the foundation for everything that we do at the Accelerator. And so what I want to do this morning is to kind of quickly map out for you our vision for our clients in a few words. And if you're playing along at home or, watching this after the fact, you can basically use this blueprint for international success as a bit of a diagnostic tool to work out which areas you're strong in and which areas need work. And so our goal for you at the Accelerator is really simple. We can sum it up, in one phrase. It's really for you to scale internationally so that you can amplify your impact. So that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get companies to scale internationally so that they can amplify their impact in the world. And for us, scaling internationally really means taking the lid off three currencies that I think matter when you are a founder looking to get into international markets. And so the first thing that we are looking at is the quality of the strategy that you are using to get into international markets. Secondly, the momentum that you have behind the plan. And that's the speed at which you're moving forward. And thirdly, the money. And by this, I mean the amount of money that you make from your international business, what you generate, and more importantly, how much you actually keep with you. So strategy, momentum, and money is the name of the game. And what we want to do is to set up the businesses that we work with to make sure that they have all three of those things. And my goal is to do transformational work with as many people as I can. I want to do it in a way that sets them up for success. I want to get our clients into international markets in 1 year if they're just starting out. And if they've already started on that journey when they come to work with us, I want to make them profitable in the space of a year. So that's the goal. It's to really do what we call a 10x strategy to give our clients 10x momentum. And we want to make them 10x money, so that they're increasing at least 10% year on year so that clients can scale pretty quickly into international markets. So how do we do it? Well, to do it, we're basically going to focus on three core areas of each business that we work with. And the first one is, I'm looking for colors that make me happy this morning. Maybe we'll use dark green. The first is about the thinking that you put into the strategy, and we call it critical thinking. So I'll write up here, critical thinking. And critical thinking is basically the opposite of just making up your plans as you go along, which is what a lot of people unfortunately do. So this critical thinking piece is all about getting insights into international markets and applying them to your business so that you can come up with a great strategy that is right for you right now. And so when we're working in the Accelerator, in this critical thinking piece, we are covering things like market selection. We are covering things like understanding your ideal international clients, looking at the culture, and so on and so forth. So the second piece is definite decisions. And an S there. And this is where we take the strategic concepts that we've come up with and we actually put them into a plan with a timeline, and then we commit to them. And that's why they're called definite decisions, because they're decisions that we make on the basis of data and evidence that we then put on paper and we commit to and we stick to them. That's why they're definite. And this is basically the key to getting the momentum going when it comes to your strategy. And then thirdly, there is a piece around how we go about executing on the plan. And we call this extraordinary. And my writing pretty much never ever fits in here. I've got to get the guys to make this template bigger so I can draw in it more effectively. Extraordinary execution. Because if you want your plans to succeed, you have to execute them to a high standard. You know, just having the plan by itself is not enough. You have to have the plan and then you have to go ahead and carry it out. So if you break it down and you kind of look at the overlaps here, if you have great thinking, you know, high quality thinking plus high quality decisions that you've committed to, you have a strategy. So our critical thinking and our definite decisions combine to give us that high quality strategy. If you've made good decisions based on data and then you execute consistently well on that plan, you get momentum. And if you've done smart strategic thinking and then executed to a really high standard, that generates the money. So that's how we like to think about it. Let me just highlight for a second some of the problems that can pop up here. If you don't do your critical thinking, you basically end up with an incoherent strategy for going global. You don't really know where you're going, whether you're doing the right stuff, or when you've arrived. And so your likelihood of success is low. And I like to call this being lost. So I'll put it down there. On the decision-making piece, if you aren't making definite decisions that you stick to, you won't move forward into the international space at any speed. And so you get stuck. And when it comes to the execution, if your performance or your team's performance is sloppy, you just won't be able to keep pace in the global space because it's competitive. So you won't be able to generate or keep the money that you need to compete. And so you wind up broke. And so, you know, if you're watching this, I'd love to think about this question. If you think about these three lenses, you know, thinking, decision-making, and execution, which one are you strongest at? And which one needs the most work? So have a think about that. Which is the area that you are best at here? Is it thinking? Is it decision-making? Is it execution? And which one is the area that you're weakest at? Okay, so that's kind of the core of the model. And I now just want to look at the 9 accelerators that make these things happen for our client companies. And for each one, again, if you're playing along at home, I would love you to give it a traffic light score. And you can do this either with like a text, or if you're drawing the model, or you can do it with a letter. G for green, O for orange, and R for red. So if something is green, it means that this is an area that you are really great at. It's a superpower for you. If an accelerator is orange, it means, yeah, it's okay, but it could probably use some work. And if it's red, that's something where you have a real gap that you really need to focus on and get help with. So as I go through these, you might like to rate yourself green or orange or red for each one. Okay, let's jump in. So when we go to scale a business, the first thing that we look at is the vision, because if the CEO or the founder doesn't have a clear vision for what they want to achieve, it's like getting in the car and driving around with no destination. It's hard to know where to go, and it's hard to know when you've arrived. So we want to make sure for each of our founders that they have an expanded vision, which I'll put up here, for the international business. And this is a big, ambitious, crystal clear picture in your mind about what you are going to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you think you're clear on that, you're green. If you're somewhat clear on that, you're orange. And if you have no clue, that would make you red. Now, the next thing we need to do when it comes to critical thinking is to get some deep insights. And what do I mean by deep insights? Well, deep insights are things like detailed knowledge about the markets that you plan to sell to. You know, the market size, the market conditions, any barriers to entry, what the culture is like, who your ideal client in that market is, what they expect, who your competition are, and how you might go about addressing them, all those kinds of things. So this is all the data that we need to help us decide whether we should go to a particular market and how. And, you know, if we go to international markets without this information, frankly, it's like walking into a minefield. So, you know, if you have this completely covered and you're a business owner, let's call it green. If you've got some information on the markets you want to go to, let's call it an orange. And if you are starting with a blank piece of paper, then you would probably be safe to call it red. So red, orange, and green. Now, the third thing we need to do in this critical thinking piece is we need to know that the reality of our business is robust. So I'm going to put up here, robust reality. And what do I mean by that? Well, this is essentially knowing that your company is ready to go international. It's about essentially about having the confidence that you have what it takes to be successful and to really be aware of whether you have all the bits and pieces that you need to be able to deliver on that big vision that you've set out over here, an expanded vision. So for example, you know, as the founder, you need to have your time optimized so that you have the mental bandwidth to focus on international expansion. Or if you don't have that, you need to have somebody in your team dedicated to the role. You've got to have somebody focused on the project of going global, or it just won't happen. You have to have your market entry approach sorted out. You know, how are we actually going to go to market? We have to be confident that your product or service is something that clients in the target market need, want, and are willing to pay premium price for. We need to have systems and standard operating procedures and frameworks and processes for all areas of the business so that as we scale, we don't scale chaos, we scale order rather than chaos. So, you know, if you're playing along at home, if you're confident that you have everything in place to go global now, you're green. If you suspect, I may have a few missing bits, then you're orange. And if you know that you are nowhere near ready, then we mark it red, and that's something that we need to work on. And Shah says, love that, scale order rather than chaos. Thank you. All right, so let's switch gears for a moment now and just talk about the decisions part of our businesses. Now, again, there are 3 big steps here. And the first one is that we want to set some, I'm going to call them, I often call it for our clients, uncompromising objectives, but for today, for simplicity, I'm going to just call it stretch goals. And this is about getting very clear on the goals that you're going to achieve in the next 120 days, in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months, in the next 36 months. And so our metric here is I am crystal clear about what my team and I will achieve in the next 120 days, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And again, you know, if you're completely clear on that and you have it documented and everybody understands it, you're green. If you've got kind of a general strat plan, but it sits in the bottom drawer, then you're probably orange. And if you have never done a planning exercise for your international business, I'd say that's probably a red. So stretch goals is one thing that we need to make good decisions. And if we're going to make those high quality data-driven decisions, we need to also know our numbers. So I'm going to put down here, know your numbers. And what I mean by knowing your numbers, this means having mastery of all the numbers in your business. So the financials, but also the marketing numbers. So we want all of our clients to be 100% on top of not just their revenue and net profit. We also want them to know what their break even is, what their accounts payable and receivable and inventory days are, especially if they're in manufacturing, and how to reduce those to maximize the cash flow in the business. We also want clients to be in control of their marketing numbers so they understand how much it costs to acquire a customer, how much a customer is worth to them over the total life cycle of that customer. Now, if you know all of those numbers that I've just mentioned by heart, that would make you green. You'd color yourself green on this accelerator. If you have a general idea of where the numbers sit, you'd be orange. And again, if you have no clue and you're thinking, what are these things she's talking about, then that would make you a red. And then lastly, for this definite decision section, we need to have a powerful plan. And this is a step-by-step plan that sets out the steps to take you into international markets. So our metric here is, do I know exactly what projects I need to complete in the next 12 months to hit my international goals? Do I know exactly what work needs to get done in the next 120 days to hit those goals? And again, red, orange, or green. If you're crystal clear, you're green. If you're somewhat clear, you're orange. And if you have no clue, you're red. Now, when it comes to this extraordinary execution piece, the three things that are going to help you to do it really well are, firstly, super systems. And as I mentioned before, this means having systems in place, high quality systems in place across all areas of your business. So your marketing, finance, HR, inventory management, team management, the works. Essentially, as you might already know, everything that gets done more than once in a business needs to have a documented process, and the people who are responsible for that thing need to know how to access and use all of the resources and all the processes. So in other words, your team has to be trained on all the systems that are inside the business. Now, if you don't have this, you can't scale the business, because as the owner of it, you end up spending way too much time explaining to people how to do things and managing them. And, as I mentioned before, as you scale, you recreate that chaos that is happening inside the domestic business on a much larger scale. And that creates very big problems on the time, money, and stress fronts. So we need super systems. We also need a top team. And what I mean by a top team is a team that has the skills to take your company international, a team that is 100% bought into your vision and is trained and empowered to make it happen. So, if you're sure that's the case, you're green. If you've got some bits, you're orange. If you don't know or have none of those things, again, it's a red. And then lastly, active accountability. This is really key to the execution piece. Do you have somebody who's a third party from outside your team who holds you accountable for progress? So if you're a larger company, this would be your board. In a smaller company, sometimes that structure is not there. So, if you have a great accountability structure, you'd be green. If you kind of have a monthly management meeting, you'd be orange. And if, you and your spouse run the business and you kind of yell at each other as you pass in the hallway, and that's your management meeting and accountability structure, that would make you red. So I'd love to just zoom out on this for a second. And as you're watching this at home, if this is a picture of your business, and look at the colors that you've colored the model in, and the goal is international scale, strategy, momentum, and money, then the more greens you can get, the better. So I'd love you just to think about, if this is a mirror of the current status of your business, what are the lessons for you right now? What does this say about the opportunities or the challenges that you have in your business right now? So that is the first model. That is the blueprint for international success. And I should write up here, let me write blueprint for international success. And in our experience, this pretty much covers everything that you need to do to successfully scale your business overseas. The second model that I wanted to share with you this morning, and this one is much shorter than the first model. This is a model that we call the 6 steps to Epiphany. And I have Margaret Ledwith, who's on the call this morning, to thank for that, because we were kind of joking about it one day and she came up with that name. I'm like, I like that name. I'm going to call this model that name. And the 6 steps to Epiphany basically describes the fastest way to making $1 million in international markets. So what I showed you a moment ago is everything you need. Now I want to look at how do we use that in the fastest way possible. So this model applies whether you are after your first $1 million in international markets, or whether you're already at $1 million and you're looking for that next $1 million. And as I said, the model is called the 6 steps to Epiphany. There are 6 categories, and we are looking for one answer in each category. And the correct answer is 1. So let me just map it out briefly. This is the fastest way to $1 million in international markets. And what I strongly recommend is that if you follow this kind of 6 steps path, you're going to get to $1 million in international markets in the fastest, straightest line possible. For every category that you have more than one thing in, it's probably going to take you 2 or 3 times as long. And so what I'm saying here is simple scales, complex fails. Simplicity is the goal. So here is our pathway. In the very bottom of the model, at the bottom of the pyramid, I'm going to put target market. And what we want our business owners to do when they start looking at going global is we want them to pick one target market, one single country that they're going to focus on. And we want to get them to put all their energy and attention in one place so that they can get incredible results. Now, we want one country, but what I see is that a lot of people come into the program and they say, oh, well, we want to go to these 4 countries or these 6 countries or these 10 countries. While on one hand, that might be exciting as a concept, it's not going to be as fast or as fun or as easy. So what we want for clients to have is one target market, not 5. And so what I will do here is I'm going to put a number 1. And if you are, again, if you're playing along at home, you can just draw this up on a piece of paper. I'd love you to think about how many target markets are you thinking that you will target at the present time. And if you had to pick one, what would that look like? Second thing, and this is a block for a lot of people, is that we want one ideal, I'll just abbreviate international, one ideal international client. And by this, I mean one ideal client avatar that we want to sell to. So we can develop more later on, but at the start, we want to come up with a profile of one very specific kind of person that we want to sell our product to. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, we sell to lots of different categories of people. Now, again, that is complicated because the more categories of people you sell to, the more different types of marketing and messaging you're going to need. So that's complicated, and we're going for simple. So we say to clients, we would like you to identify one ideal international client type. So, it might be a CEO, or it might be, depending on the product, a woman between 30 and 45 who has these particular characteristics. The next thing that we want to get clear on is our product. We want one core product, something that is going to get your ideal client the results that they are after. And again, often what I find is that people come to us, and let me give you an example from the health space for a client that we worked with a little while ago. They came in and they said, oh, well, we've got this, it was a health supplement company. We've got powder, and we've got hand cream, and we've got capsules, and we've got soap, and we've got chocolate. And it was just complicated. And look, on one hand, there's nothing wrong with complicated, except that it's slower and harder and less smart. So again, when we're starting out and we're thinking about what product we're going to put into the international market, to keep it simple, we want just one product that we know is going to sell. Now, the exception to this rule is if you are making over $1 million already in international markets. If you're already doing that, then you can break these rules if you want to. But as I say, this is the fastest way to get to $1 million. Once you've cleared that hurdle, you can start switching things up and breaking the rules. What we want next is a single channel to market. So I'll just call it channel. And whether that's going to be distributors or direct sales or e-commerce or selling to retail, we want to simplify it so that instead of targeting all these different ways of getting into the market, we just pick one way to begin with that we're going to get our stuff to market. And we want to get just one way to get started because, again, it's easier to master one channel at a time. So again, let me put the number 1 here. I think you are probably getting the picture when it comes to this, the pattern. Fifthly, we want one traffic source. And by traffic source, I mean, how are we going to get people to hear our message and see what we're offering? And so we have a couple of options. We can either go for organic content marketing, we can go for paid ads, we could go for business development, depending on, if it was a high ticket product, you might go for business development, or perhaps we're going to go for partnerships. And we're going to tap into the networks of other people who have already got access to those clients and customers who we would like to work with. And so again, to keep it simple, we're not going to say, well, we're going to do partnerships and paid ads and content marketing and get a BDM. We're going to pick, to start, just one, and we're going to go with that one. And then finally, once we've got these pieces dialed in, the last step is we're going to do 1 year. We're going to spend 1 year refining and sharpening these things that we've chosen and focusing on these 6 things, one of each, instead of jumping from here to there and changing tack every few months. And Matt says, such a tough challenge to narrow down, well, one of each, absolute clarity and focus when you do though. Yeah, and Matt, that is what we have. That is what we've discovered when we've done this exercise with people, even people who have been feeling really confused and overwhelmed by the amount of choice. When we oblige them to focus it to one and they pick one, suddenly they look at it and they go, wow, this is really, really simple. Actually, I feel as though this is something that I can achieve. And that's kind of the magic of this particular model. I just want to do the counterfactual for a second though. What do you think happens? Let's do a game of what if. So I'll get the people on the call to unmute and let me know. What do you think happens to business owners who run 3 markets, 3 ideal clients, 5 products, 4 channels, 4 traffic sources? What's the end result of a business run like that? Who wants to put it in the chat or unmute and tell me, one or the other?
You scale chaos rather than order.
Yeah. And what happens when that happens? What do you think happens to your growth?
Stunted. I would also think that the kind of one area that you, even if you're, diversifying across the 4 that you said, I feel like one is going to streak ahead anyway, and you just end up applying more focus to that because it's just where the money's coming in and that kind of thing. So everything else suffers, I guess. Sometimes
you have a few things and one does really well and then a couple of others do sort of okay. And so the temptation that people have is that rather than saying, okay, we are just going to focus on the one that does really well, they're like, well, these other things are still making some money, or these sources are still bringing some traffic, and they keep on going with it. And what it does is it just dissipates their focus and energy and also their resources. I like to liken it to, have you ever lit a fire with a magnifying glass rather than a match? When you're a kid, a little pile of twigs, and you hold the magnifying glass over the twigs and the sticks and let the sun shine on it until it bursts into flame. When you do that, it takes a while, right? Can you imagine if you have to keep 3 or 4 of those little piles of twigs and sticks burning with just that magnifying glass? That's what it's like when you're trying to pursue 3 or 4 of everything, rather than getting really focused on keeping that one little fire alight until it's going well enough that you can just add some kindling and it will keep going. You have to be sitting there scurrying back and forward between all 3 or 4 fires and trying to keep them going. So rather than doing that, what we want to do is we want to have 1 market, 1 ideal international client, 1 product, 1 channel, 1 traffic source, and 1 year. That is the fastest path. So, how do you pick? Well, basically, we pick 1 country that makes sense for our company based on data, 1 country that has enough opportunity and isn't too risky for us to operate in. We pick 1 ideal client, the kind of client who we love, who we can help, and who can pay us. We want to provide a product to that ideal client, which is going to solve their most pressing challenges as it relates to what we sell and to take them where they want to go. We want 1 channel. So, which channel do we pick? Well, we pick the channel that's going to most consistently turn prospects into clients. And when it comes to the traffic source, we should be picking a traffic source we know we can scale. And then 1 year, well, we're going to constantly refine the model over a year and give it a chance to actually get off the ground. So as I said at the start, if I had to summarize this model in 2 sentences, it would be complex fails, simple scales. And if you look at the businesses that are doing well in international markets, with a few exceptions, they've usually got a simple model. I mean, once you get to the size of Google, as I said, you get past your first million, you can break some of these rules. But the companies that tend to do well, they sell 1 thing and they just do it over and over and over, and they do it really, really well. So I'd just love to know what about this model appeals to the folks on the call. What do you like about this model?
I think it's that focus, Cynthia. As I said, I think it's too easy to sort of keep those multi-track approaches in mind. I think your analogy about the firing up the kindling is a really good it's a really good one, because it is too easy just to go, oh, that's okay, there's just a bit of that's sort of passive and I don't have to do much, but even just doing a little on it does distract you, does take energy away, does take resources. And the more that you can funnel the resources into the things that are really driving it forward, the better.
I totally agree with that. So look, those are our two models, and I hope sharing those with the group today has been valuable. I think the last thing that I wanted to say was, if you have a question on the models or anything else, feel free to, let me put it there, feel free to get in touch with me at my email, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Hit me up if you have a question. I would be more than happy to answer it. And thank you for your attention today.